What is up, everybody? Coach Chad here, the CEO of the Next Level Coaching Academy, and we got another podcast, the Fit CEO podcast, that is. We got another episode with our amazing client, Nina. Nina, give us a quick 30 to 60 second background, and then we'll dive into your story.
There you are. So sorry for the for the undramatic intro to that, but I did catch the question. I think my connection dropped. So 30 seconds. My journey to NLCA was kind of an abrupt one. It really happened kind of out of the blue. But in hindsight, I think that this decision to join the coaching and the business group was something that deep down I've felt like was the next step in my career and in my life for a while. So, going back a couple of years, I was a swimmer at UCLA. I admired the hell out of my strength and conditioning coach. At the time, I already had a major. It already felt too late. I figured my chances of doing what I think would make me happy are kind of already over. And so I started my career. I've been in sales for the last 5-6 years. And while I've definitely found ways that my skill sets as an athlete have transferred over, it wasn't giving me the fulfillment that I really felt like I needed. So the last couple of months of my year have been realizing that life is freaking short and that you got one chance at building a career, and it's not too late, right? I'm only 28 years old. It's absolutely not too late. And I would rather get started now than to wake up when I'm 45 and wish that I did things differently. So the dream has always been kind of deep down in myself, my subconsciousness. And then I think, the beauty of Instagram is that you get connected with the people that you need the most at the right time, and happen to see, an Instagram ad by Chad, and I made it happen.
Let's freaking go. I didn't know you were 28. We're the same age.
I know. You drop it every so often in the modules, and I'm like, damn, that guy's killing it. But you did get started, at like 17, 18 years old?
19.
You started all this? Yeah, 19. Yeah, so you've been at it for a while too.
Almost a decade. Yep, almost a decade. Feels like a decade too. I feel like I'm 55.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet.
Well, let's unpack this story. I'm excited. So, all right, you went to UCLA. You became a swimmer. You were on the athlete career path. I resonate. I played lacrosse. Maybe you heard that in the modules as well. I played college lacrosse. You said you had a major already decided. What was the major? It wasn't sales, the major, right?
So it wasn't sales. I, as a young high schooler, middle schooler, I was always creatively inclined. I would constantly beg my friends to come over and film YouTube videos with me, random music videos. In the early 2000s, that was like booming. And so I thoroughly enjoyed doing things creatively. And so my initial hope was to apply for the communications major. And if anyone's gone to UCLA, you understand how competitive it is to get into that department. And so after my first application, I hadn't gotten in, I made a pivot to sociology, which is a bit more broad. It's a study of social interaction and connection. And it really allowed me to kind of hone in on some of the topics that to me. So, the sociology of communication and media and things of that nature. So it definitely appealed to some of my general interests, but I think getting a bachelor's degree, as I think a lot of people would agree, doesn't always give you the tactics you need to build a business, or even just to manage things like taxes and finances. So, post-college, I realized, look, education was great. It gave me an opportunity to continue my swimming career and to excel at something that I love, while also giving me some accreditation, I guess, for jobs moving in to my early career. But honestly, I think from that point forward, I knew that if I was ever going to grow, I needed to do it on my own and take matters into my own hands. And so I think the entrepreneur mindset really started once I got into the corporate world and realized how easy it was to see what the next 30 years of my life looked like. But yeah, that's kind of my background on my major and how I how I decided to stick with something for those 4 years.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like you said at a young age you were very creative, right? You were filming the music videos and YouTube videos and things of that nature. And now you're it's funny because you're full circle and you're allowed to have the creative expression of being an entrepreneur. But it seems like you kind of lost that throughout your journey in college. Is that a fair statement?
That's super fair. That's super fair. I think that as an athlete, there's a lot of education and guidance around self development, and I think some of it can be very pragmatic and metric driven, results driven, and so I assumed that success would be me being pragmatic and me being metric driven and losing the parts of me that were maybe less tangible. And I think what's so beautiful about having my own business is that I can be pragmatic and I can be metric driven but also build a brand voice and build kind of a brand image for myself and tap into some of those other areas that I love the most, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the thing that frustrates me so much about like the traditional path is it completely like removes any creative thought and it's just like you follow this routine, you follow this structure, you do these things, you get this paycheck. And I'm so happy that you were able to like remove yourself from that. What was the breaking point? So obviously you wanted the communications, you got into sociology, you did the sales career, but what was like the ultimate breaking point where you're like, I gotta stop this?
Sure. So, I tell my clients all the time, I'm an open book. I feel that sharing my story and my struggles is the best way that I can help them. Aside from the information I've gained through business coaching and, there's just the technical certifications as a coach, my experience as an athlete, both in terms of like physical training and mental training, I think, speak volumes and have helped me shift the needle when necessary more than anything that I've learned in the book. So when it came to my breaking point, I was about 2 years into working an inside sales role, kind of the typical stuffy corporate environment. And I remember texting my boss one day, flat out lie about why I couldn't come in. I think I had said something like, "Hey, my partner is dealing with like a medical emergency. I have to take them to an ER." And his response was, "Is there any way she can find a friend to take her?" And I knew at that moment that number one, my time wasn't respected. My balance in life also wasn't respected. I wasn't able to make time for the most urgent issue. And that just sent me into kind of into a space where I knew something had to shift. And obviously there was signs earlier on that probably should have led me to quitting and finding a different job earlier on. But I remember that specific moment realizing my time's not respected, and I'm not being treated like a true professional. I felt like my autonomy had just kind of been ripped out of me with reading that response.
Yeah, that's a terrible response. Literally,
Terrible.
like terrible. Yeah. This morning, our director of sales, she found out that her aunt was going to be terminal and was going to pass away. And it was like spur of the moment. She's like, I got to get on a flight. And we are like, yeah, go get on a flight. Like, we got you. We got you covered. So, another thing I hate about the corporate world, and we could probably do a whole podcast on that, is just how like they're not about the human. They're not very human first. But
Yeah.
getting back to you here, from the point that you sent that text, you had that experience. How long did it take you to actually leave your sales job and get started?
Yeah. 3 years. It's been
Three
three
years.
years since that moment. Yeah. I think that I say this a lot with people who I'm meeting for the first time. There is a path that is kind of either verbally or non-verbally expected of you when you are young. I grew up in a, middle to high class, culture, go to school, go to a UC or private school, get a full-time job. And as an athlete, my fear when I graduated was not finding my purpose after sport. And that was kind of a question. What are you going to do after graduation? And so my initial kind of knee flex response was to do exactly the opposite of what I was taught. So I ditched everything I learned as an athlete. I didn't put time in to train and take care of my nutrition. My number one MO was to find my new passion. And so I did that by partying, traveling, probably spending too much money, working a 9 to 5. I worked my ass off. But I felt so empty inside. There was nothing that was really bringing me fulfillment. And so I think that, to answer your question, to get to the point where I was ready to make the switch took 3 years because of, I think, society standards of what is quote unquote like success. And it took me a lot of time and a lot of years to kind of unlearn some of those deeply rooted beliefs.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you spend, I don't know how old you were, but let's just say you were 25. When you spend 25 years of your life living life one way, it's hard to break that mold because it's comfortable to stay in, what you know, and not to break through the unknown. So let's fast forward through those 3 years. You just told your boss, F you, you're going to do your thing. Did you immediately go to NLCA or did you try to start on your own first?
Yeah, so I started on my own first. It actually wasn't with fitness and nutrition coaching. I started my own clothing brand.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, just to kind of get you up fully to current day, I still have a full-time job and I'm about 3 months into NLCA,
Yeah,
making maybe like a quarter to half of my monthly income. So it's kind of my side hustle at the moment. But
yeah.
I felt the urge to into some of those creative aspects of my personality and feel more well-rounded. So I started my clothing brand, Imperial Apparel, with the mission of helping former athletes find purpose after sport. And
Nice.
yeah, so like the first couple months, I did some Instagram lives with former teammates of mine. Figured out the ropes when it comes to getting a good manufacturer. I learned how to like heat press, all that stuff, and just like I was explaining earlier, I think subconsciously I knew the right route for me, and I think this was a good segue into that. And so when I stumbled across NLCA, I was like, look, this is what I know is my true calling, and there's going to be a way that I can integrate these two things. And I was right. One of the beauties of having this brand that I kind of gave I gave it a shot at the beginning is that I can use my merch to send out client gifts when they hit milestones and things like that. So I was able to kind of sew them together, but that was kind of the true start of I guess the entrepreneurial side.
That's amazing. So please tell me you work with ex-athletes in your fitness business then too, right?
Yes, for the most part. Yeah. My whole slogan is train like an athlete. So not
Yeah.
specifically for former athletes, but you know, pulling on some of the philosophy that I learned as a swimmer for sure.
It'd be so cool. Just I know this is like off topic. It just came to my mind. I feel like I have to share it, but I feel like it'd be so cool if your whole entire offer also fulfilled the mission of what your clothing brand is doing, which is helping former athletes try to find their new passion, where you could use fitness as the bridge to help because like you said, you did partying and things of that nature to then find fitness, but maybe you can help them with fitness first and then also guide them into finding whatever their passion is in their career life. I feel like if you encompass that into an offer, that would be really cool.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I think there's definitely room to build on that. I have an ebook called An Athlete's Guide to Living an Intentional Life, and it's a quick 15, 17 page kind of cheat sheet on how to manage the stress of goal setting and mindset and negative self-talk and things like that. So I believe I'm going to at some point, put it out as a free resource, but I think that's definitely a good kind of segment of the business that I could build out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a great lead magnet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm super
Yeah.
excited. That's a great mission. All right.
Thank you.
So backtracking, I know we got went off the veered path there, but correct me if I'm wrong. We were just talking about you started your apparel company, and then from there you started NLCA, right? That's where we left off.
Yes. Yes, about a
Okay.
month
All
in.
right.
Yeah.
So you started NLCA. You probably saw an ad of yours truly.
Mhm.
Did you just jump right in? Were you like the go-getter? I have no fear at all. I'm just going to do this thing. Or were you absolutely terrified and had to overcome some of those hurdles?
So I was absolutely terrified after I committed and put a down payment. I wasn't terrified when I started talking to you guys. To be honest, I believe I had signed up to download one of your free resources. And to be honest, I to this day haven't taken a look at it. And I laugh about that every day. I'm like, how funny is that? That's the lead magnet that helped kind of help me take the next step. But it was really just the DMs after that that helped the momentum. And I think the idea of that lead magnet and the free resource was what kind of pulled me in. And just like you say all the time to us, I think something that is uniquely special about NLCA is the personal aspect of it. And knowing that I was talking to a human and hearing them ask me questions about what I need and where I'm at meant a lot. And they weren't these robotic responses. And so moving into the call with Drew, it was pretty low pressure. We talked for 2 hours, I believe. And as a
Mm.
sales rep myself, I know how precious time is, especially when lead flow's high. So that call, really, really kind of opened up my eyes to possibilities. And my oh shit moment was when I said yes and I signed the contract. But yeah.
Yeah. So what was the first thing you did after you signed the contract? Like, what was your panic moment? Did you call somebody? Did you yell, scream? What did you do?
My first thing that I did after was I went out into the living room. My girlfriend was sitting on the couch, and I told her that I had agreed to the 6-month business coaching program. And she said, "Didn't you just sign up to get your CPA certification? And you're doing that in your spare time?" And I'm like, "Yeah, about that. I'll figure it out. Drew said that I could do both, so I'm going to do both." And so um, that was the first memory that I recall. And just kind of on that note, from that point forward, it took a lot of additional conversations with her. I think people who have partners and maybe even kids can resonate with this. It takes conversations with someone to explain what you're doing, because as my time was more limited, I had to get really smart with when I was spending my free time and how I was spending my free time. But yeah, from that point, it was kind of a storm of excitement and a lot of work. But that was the first memory I had right after.
Yeah, I'm always interested. That's why I asked. So, all right,
Yeah.
we're now up to the point where you're in NLCA. You're within that first month. Let's break that down. So you said that right now you're about halfway to what your full time job is bringing in. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, and you're 3 months in. You said right.
I think about 4. I think it's
Okay, so
4.
you're 4 months in. All right, so it took 4 months to make about half of what your full time job is bringing in. Let's chat about month one. So month one is always the most nerve wracking. What was month one like for you, experience wise?
Yeah. So experience wise, it was it was rewarding, to be honest. I think one of the most powerful things about the first part of the modules is taking action first, and so that's exactly what I did. I hear you in my head a lot of times. You said a line like, "What you don't want to do is sit down and watch the modules and do none of this." You hear something, you go do it, and so taking messy action was key for me. Um, Going back to my partner, after I had signed my first client, I think like maybe 15 days into the program, she was like, "What do you mean you have your first client?" And she was almost doubtful. Like, she believed in me, but she was like, how can you have your first client? You just started this." And that was a reward in itself, is just taking action first and getting some immediate gratification.
Yeah, you had the bragging rights right away. You're like, look,
Yeah.
see, I can do this.
Yeah.
you used,
No, it
you
felt good.
used the company tenant too. You said act first. That's super. It's really cool for me when I see a client say one of our company tenants. So hell
Yeah,
yeah.
no, they stick. No, it was difficult for me to find my company tenants because I liked NLCAs so much. I was like, I don't know if I can beat this. I think I live by this. This is kind of like morally now how I think. But yeah, no, I love it.
That's awesome. All right, so we got the first client. Where did we go from there? What started happening after the first client?
Yeah. So after the first client, I, continued to message my power base. For anyone who's not familiar, that's the people that, you already know, family, friends, people who follow you on Instagram. And I had a lot of great conversations. I think people weren't super surprised that I was doing this, and they, were behind me 100%. I also think that there was a bit of maybe frustration because at first all you want to do is continue to grow. And sometimes people who are just receiving news that you're making a big switch need time to adjust to who you are now. And even though they've known you in a certain light. And now they have to kind of reconstruct their ideas of who you are and what you do. So it was amazing to, you know, build a habit of having these conversations with people and asking questions about where they are and things like that. But that was kind of the rough patch in the first month, is just trying to kind of establish myself as a new professional and figuring out, what does my voice sound like? What type of content do I put out? How do I want to deliver this info? And just build the trust with my organic market.
Yeah, now being on the other side of that, so we're talking about creating a new identity for yourself, right? So that was the big thing month one. It sounds like people who knew you one way now have to view you a different way. In creating that new identity, and like I said, now being on the other side of that, what would you say to somebody who hasn't started that yet, or maybe going through that?
Right. So I would say to anyone who's going through that right now is um, to to grow down, don't grow out. I don't know where I heard that quote, but to grow down to me means thinking about what you want for yourself, not what you should do or what you should look like. There's a book called "F the Shoulds, Do the Wants," and I've been reading it, and it's really helping me understand, who do I want to be? What do I want to look like? How do I want my message to come across? Because the truth of the matter is, if you're starting your business as a fitness coach, you're probably also seeing other fitness coaches post reels and Instagrams, and you question, should I have content like that? Should I get a fancy camera? X, Y, Z. And the truth of the matter is, you shouldn't do something because someone else is doing it. You should do something because it feels like you. And I think in such a saturated, media, individuality is what really is gonna kind of win over everything else. And so focus on what your image is, from the smallest details, like what kind of clothes do I wear, to how long are my captions, and do I use slang, do I not use slang, things like that. Because being consistent with your brand voice, I think, is key.
Would you say, now my perception is that you found all this stuff out pretty easily. Would you say that you found out this stuff easily? Like your individuality, what you stand for, was that easy for you?
It was a bit easy. I, for a while, had like role models that I followed. So there's other fitness coaches online that I see myself in, and I use those as inspiration. So I would say it was easy because I had examples that were kind of leading the way, and I could see they were successful. I think if you don't have any role models, like, go out and find them, and see if they align with your style, your way of delivering things, and then use that as inspiration. Because the truth of the matter is, like, you don't always have to start from pure scratch. Like, you're a coach and you give us ideas, and then we use those ideas to make them our own. So I would say, yeah, if you're having trouble figuring out what your brand voice sounds like or looks like, be intentional about how you're looking for that, or looking for role models.
So it's something really important there, Nina. And I would, if NLCA students are listening, I would like more NLCA students to adopt that, is not just taking what I say for like verbatim, like you have to do it that way, but taking what I say, internalizing it, and making it your own. I say that right in the beginning of the module. And like I said, I wish more people took that seriously. So I appreciate you doing that. What has been some of the biggest challenges of starting a business?
Yeah, managing my anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety about um, productivity and output.
Mm.
Um, I think, you
I resonate.
know, I believe it. Yeah, and that was actually one question I had for you. You've been talking recently about being someone who sets targets rather than blocks off time on their calendar, and that's the difference between an entrepreneur and maybe like an employee mindset. But I'm curious to hear when you have a day, let's say you put in 10 hours, and if let's say you started from scratch, and so you sit down in the morning, you start DMs, and you DM for half the day, and you don't book 2 sales calls. How do you manage your self-talk when you put in as much work as you physically can, and for as long as your eyes are staying open, you still don't hit those targets?
Plant the seed for tomorrow. Usually, what I found is the next day, if I'm going back to the time when I was doing all the DMing, the next day after a day like that, I'll book 2 or 3 calls. And it kind of all, if you look at the data, it kind of all averages out. You talked about looking at things logistically and creatively. I would challenge you to look at things logistically here. And if you do track your data, look at the trends over a longer period of time. And if you look at the trends over a longer period of time, you'll be able to see the results and you'll forget about the shitty days.
That's really helpful. I think that's key. And right now, I'm focusing on the small things every single day, but I think, maybe to a fault, to the point where I'm not really looking at the averages. So appreciate that. That's great advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Productivity anxiety. Are you basically saying, I feel like I know what you're talking about, but basically saying like it's never enough, right? Like I always got to be doing more. Like I always got to find something to do. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, it's almost as if like I will, I'll spend a good amount of time messaging folks, and if I don't have any good conversations from that, and that's, a reoccurring thing over time, I, I feel as if like sometimes maybe there's something I'm doing wrong and I can't identify the blind spot. One of the biggest struggles for me has really just been converting conversations to calls and finding people to have conversations with. And so I think, yeah, my anxiety kind of stems from knowing that, hey, look, I'm going into this and I'm going to, send some messages, but I already kind of feel a bit defeated because I've been struggling with this and I haven't seen the result that I want. So
Yeah.
going back to it every day and staying consistent has been, I think, a real struggle because I've been struggling with it.
Yeah. 100%. You got that fancy free resource you haven't put out yet. I challenge you to try to get that out there for some leads.
Yeah.
Also, keep this in mind. Um, we're not doing DMing forever. That's really just to get the first couple of clients in so that we have some cash flow. And then we want to learn how to use that cash flow to create more awareness of of who you are and who your brand is. There's a new module in the course, dollar a day strategy. So $1 a day is $30 a month. But basically, you find your best 1 to 3 posts that you've done organically in terms of likes and views and things of that nature, and you just boost it for $1 a day. Like I said, you could do up to 3 posts, so that would be $3 a day, $90 a month. And the premise there is now you're exposing your best content to other people, and if it's your best content, it's going to perform well, which is going to bring in more likes, it's going to bring in more follows. Now you're setting yourself up for success because you have more people to message. So I would say I don't know what your full job is making, so I don't know what half of what that is, but assuming it's probably enough to spend $30 a month.
Totally. It's definitely doable. And I had a feeling you'd say that. I know that that new module is in there, so I'm going to take a look at that. And then another cool thing, just for anyone who's listening who is thinking about this, Chad's assistant coaches are constantly taking like what's the how am I what am I saying? They're taking stock
I
of
say that
where
from the
you're
side.
at and what you need to work on. And so I think one key thing I can also do is just diversify my marketing strategies. So Christy and I this month are working on doing IG lives, and I'm going to do a couple of those in September and October. So
Oh,
looking for areas of improvement and not like just letting myself go down this tunnel of like, oh, it doesn't work, it's a forever thing. And actually looking for ways that I can change my marketing strategy to bring in people in different ways instead of just cold outreach. So
yeah,
yeah,
100%. We're working on some new cool modules as well. I'm actually working on some lead gen stuff that will be out here, I would say, in the next couple of weeks, which I'm pumped about. But in the
sweet.
meantime, try the dollar a day strategy. You'll get some more peeps in. And then, like I said, the goal here in the beginning is just to get cash flow. And then once you have resources, it's less about giving up your time and energy, because that's what messaging is, right? It's time and energy. And then it's more about leveraging the resources to buy back your time, but still bring in more leads. So that's the path you're on right now. It's the harder part of this journey, but once you have the cash flow, we'll be able to use that to invest more into ads, and you won't have to worry about the messaging part.
Sure. Awesome. That sounds great.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about NLCA?
Ooh, my favorite part about NLCA would have to be the one-on-one calls. I think that the community and the accountability is huge. When we're sitting behind a screen, it can feel like we're on an island, and getting in front of a real person to talk about something that you're struggling with, who also has experience. Like I'm not sure if every assistant coach you hire also has some type of online business, but I know for
Yeah.
sure Christy does. Yeah. And so that has been instrumental, knowing that these things that are being taught are tried and true and are currently being done. And seeing you guys lead by example, I think, is the most powerful part of what you guys do.
That's our whole mission. Is to
Yes.
set the standard of
Look,
excellence by leading through example. But yeah, every coach has to have their own successful online fitness coaching business if we're gonna hire them to work with you guys. And Chrissy's a rock star. She's I don't know if she told you, but she's one of the OG NLCA clients. Like she started with us back in like 2019 or something like that.
really cool. Yeah, she was like, when I started, I was just super fearless. I was like, this is gonna work, and I just did it. And she has this like really cool like happy medium between being really fierce and being an athlete herself, and also just being like, look, like if I want a pumpkin spice latte, I'm gonna get a pumpkin spice latte, and I'm gonna teach my clients that they can build balance into their life. And she doesn't live and die by um you know this whole like put your head down and grind. I think she's a great spokesperson for balance, while also crushing your goals. So
Yeah,
love it.
she does a great job at it. Her husband is in the military, so I think that's kind of where she gets her little bit more like hard ass side. But she
Hmm.
also is that, like you said, perfectly with the soft side as well. So
Yeah, I
she's.
believe it.
Will I be seeing you at NLCA Live? You gonna make it out to Texas or what?
um you won't,
Oh
unfortunately.
no.
I
Oh,
know,
no.
I know. um yeah, there's just some other stuff going on right now. Building my family and stuff, so I'm trying to be smart with finances, but I will have definite FOMO. If I was single and I was on my own, I'd be there in a heartbeat. But I'll be cheering you guys on from home.
Hey, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. It's funny you use the word FOMO because I feel like that's why everybody buys their ticket is because of
Yeah,
the fear of missing out. But wrapping up our podcast here, this has been great. I've really enjoyed this. Usually, there's a couple of questions that I ask at the end. Now that you've gotten over the fear of starting this, right? You're at the point where you're close to replacing your full time job and making this your full time job. What would you say to the individual who is nervous to even get started in the first place? What would your advice be to them?
sure. One of my favorite quotes is players that hit often. And what that means to me is if you don't try, there's 100% certainty that it doesn't work out. And, I'm learning through this that nothing happens overnight, but there are wins along the way. And, yeah, so I said, just I would say, get your get your feet in the water and just jump in. I'd say just do that. If you have a feeling, there's really like no way that you can fail. The only way you can fail is if you don't try.
Yeah, 100%. And the only way that you could fail is if you quit too, once you do try.
Fair.
So you can't stop. You can't stop. Nina, this has been awesome. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Nina A Hayes, NINAAHAYES. You can also find me on my website, www.imperialathletics.co.
Amazing. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say? Any questions you have for me, or do you feel like we crushed it?
I feel like we crushed this. I feel like
I
we
think
absolutely crushed this. Yeah.
I think we did. Air high five. All right, y'all. That is going to bring us to an end. If you guys did enjoy this, make sure you screenshot it up, tag Nina, tag myself, post it on your Instagram story, leave us a like, leave us a review, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.